Welcome to Teaching Truth. My name is Glenn Cartwright. Well, we come today to our fifth and our final reflection in our Next Generation study, drawing from Psalm 78, where we will tell the next generation the praiseworthy deeds of the Lord. That's our responsibility as those who are older leaders, to invest in the younger generation, the next generation. And we've been looking this week at how that happened in the lives of three different partnerships. We've been looking at Moses and Joshua, we've been looking at Elijah and Elisha, and we've been looking at Samuel and David. And today we come to the final partnership that we want to unpack, and that is the partnership, in fact one of the greatest partnerships in the New Testament, that between Paul and Timothy. Acts chapter 16 verses 1 to 5 details for us how Paul and Timothy met. Let's read that together. We read that Paul came to Derbe and then to Lystra, where a disciple named Timothy lived, whose mother was a Jewess and a believer, but whose father was a Greek. The brothers at Lystra and Iconium spoke well of him, that is Timothy, they spoke well of him. Paul wanted to take him along on the journey, so he circumcised him because of the Jews who lived in that area, for they all knew his father was a Greek. As they travelled from town to town, they delivered the decisions reached by the apostles and elders in Jerusalem for the people to obey. So the churches were strengthened in faith and grew daily in numbers. The start of the partnership between Paul and Timothy. Again, quick history lesson. Paul was born in Tarsus. He was a Benjamite. He was a tent maker in his early life. His conversion, as you know, was remarkable. He was blinded on the road to Damascus. And you'll recall he met Barnabas in Antioch. And thereafter Paul embarked on the first of his three recorded missionary journeys, visiting amongst other places Cyprus and Lystra, where he was stoned. And it was on his second missionary journey that he is taken to the place where he meets young Timothy. Young Timothy, on the other hand, was born, as we read, of a Greek father, and we read that his mother was a very godly woman. And because of that, as you might expect, he was trained in the scriptures from a very early age. He became Paul's assistant, his young protege. And such was the depth of relationship between Paul and Timothy that Paul wrote two letters to him, 1st and 2nd Timothy, full of wise and practical advice and instruction from an older leader to a younger leader. Two letters that even today are hugely relevant for us. Now, before we move on, it's worth noting that Timothy's mother was a godly woman. Now, why is that significant in relation to our subject? Well, quite simply, I believe it teaches us that we ought not to underestimate the impact nor the influence of godly parents, nor the importance of them in helping them shape and mould the life and the leadership skills of a younger leader, be it their son or their daughter. I remember being at a seminar once, and the person who was leading the seminar asked around the group what different people did, and this woman said rather apologetically, "Well, I'm only a mum." And I felt sorry and, to be honest, a little bit angry. Not for the woman who was saying it, but at the fact we've relegated one of the highest callings to a place where the mother concerned felt the need to apologise for the God-given role that she had. You see, the mother-child relationship is one of the closest human relationships anyone can experience. Let's never forget the influence and impact, perhaps more than anyone else, a mother can have from an early age in the life of a young and emerging leader. In God and the Generations, Matt Bird and David Hilborn write this, that leaders of the church are to be those who can relate well across the generation gap. This happens, hear this, first and foremost in the home. If the leaders prove able to nurture and raise children as godly men and women, they may also be able to raise up new generations within the church. What are some of the ways then in which Paul invested in young Timothy? Very briefly and simply, Paul first of all loved Timothy. Oh, without any shadow of a doubt, Paul loved this young man. We're in the opening words of each letter that Paul wrote to him, that Paul addresses young Timothy as my true son, or my dear son. You see, Paul's love for Timothy had been born out of and expressed in a genuine, transparent love and concern. See, Paul didn't just lead Timothy, he wasn't just generally interested in him, but he loved Timothy. He took time to guide, to value, and to counsel him. And how important it is to do that today as we relate to those who are younger in years, that God has perhaps gifted to us, perhaps even gifted to you in your local church. When we love someone, the practical outworking of that love is not only our desire and wish to spend time with them, but to care for them and to show that in practical ways. See, going up to speak to a young person at the end of a service, saying hello and just asking how school has been or how university has been, actually can have quite a positive impact. Try that sometime. It's very, very interesting. It takes time to build relationships. And how do you build a relationship? By loving someone. Paul loved Timothy. He also led Timothy. He led him by what he wrote to him. See, Paul's letters are a real treasure chest of sound instruction and practical guidance. In other words, Paul didn't just leave young Timothy to get on with it, but actually led him by imparting wise counsel to him. And if we are older in years, it's our responsibility to impart wise counsel to younger leaders. We neglect this vital area in our relationships with young people and in our churches to our detriment. The counsel of older leaders, to me, has been invaluable. And of course, the other side of the coin, which is equally important, is that the younger leader must be willing to be led. In other words, they must be willing to receive wise counsel and guidance in the spirit in which it has been given. That's a mark of maturity, being teachable and being open to receive wise counsel. Paul led Timothy. Who are we leading? By our example, by our counsel, by the guidance we give. Hard though it may be at times, We do younger leaders an injustice if we fail to counsel them. Finally, Paul liberated Timothy. He liberated Timothy not only reminding him of the gifts he had, but by releasing him to use those gifts within the context of the local churches to which they went. Paul and Timothy served together. He liberated, he allowed him to get on with the job. Do we, according to gifting and according to spiritual ability and character, carve out opportunities to liberate, as it were, the younger leaders that we know to develop their gifts? Anna Robbins, a lecturer at the Acadia Divinity College in Nova Scotia, wrote this: "Some of the most enjoyable youth ministries I have been a part of have empowered the young people in the community to worship and minister and be equipped as disciples with all their gifts and abilities so that they are equipped to go out and lead their friends to Christ." That liberation, that empowering, that releasing, that off you go sense that Paul gave to Timothy. By actively encouraging and liberating those who are younger in years to be involved in ministry, creativeness, enthusiasm, passion will come to the fore, gifts will be developed, and as a result we will see investment bearing fruit. Paul's letters to Timothy, beyond any shadow of a doubt, demonstrate his commitment in developing and supporting an emerging leader. There is so much that we can learn from this relationship, the elder statesman and the younger leader. So this week we've looked at 4 partnerships. Moses envisioned, equipped and empowered Joshua. May we envision, equip and empower the younger leaders that we know. Elijah welcomed, walked with and warned Elisha. May we welcome, walk with and warn the younger leaders that we know. Samuel anointed, acknowledged and activated David. May we anoint, acknowledge and activate the younger leaders we know. And Paul loved, led and liberated Timothy. May we love, may we lead and may we liberate the younger leaders that we know. Now here's the $64,000 question as we conclude our study. Are we envisioning, equipping, empowering, welcoming with, warning, anointing, acknowledging, activating, loving, leading and liberating the young leaders that God has perhaps placed in our church and perhaps has brought into our life? Now is the time to be doing that. I am so grateful in my life to those people in my life, my Sunday school teacher, my youth leader, the pastors in the churches I've been a part of, who have encouraged, who have invested in me to be the person that I've become with God's grace and help today. May we be people like Moses, like Elijah, like Samuel, like Paul. May we be those people who take up that challenge to tell the next generation the praiseworthy deeds of the Lord. Will we tell the next generation the praiseworthy deeds of the Lord? May God help us and empower us to do that For if we are faithful in sowing into the next generation, we may never know where that seed might fall. God bless you.